Today is Tuesday, December 27th, 2022, back for another recap. And today we had a outside bar. Price took the high of Friday into this little imbalance that was just above, and then ran down to Friday's low, closed right near the low. And I took two trades today, one on S&P, one on NASDAQ, and I will break down step by step what made me take those trades. Overall, pretty pleased with the results. Definitely think there was, looking back on it, some opportunity to do some things a little bit better. Let's go into the lower time frame. On the hourly, we can see that we spent majority of Asia session above Friday's high. We gapped up at the open, and when we see a extended period of time, like a whole session above a previous day's high into this imbalance as well, this liquidity pool, when it's spending like about a session there before kind of breaking down the other way, for me, I look at this whole thing, this whole move, more or less, as a Judas swing, really from the opening gap. So there was no real Judas swing at the open. If I go to the 30-minute chart, you can see that right at the open, it's just a tiny wick. Very, very subtle Judas move there, but that's because, in my opinion, it's because the work was already done up here in Asia and the beginning of London, where we took the liquidity above. So this was the Judas swing, sort of that false move or wrong, I don't like to say false move, but the move that then got rejected before repricing lower. So the market did not need to do a big retracement back up once it spent all this time up here. Once it started creating gaps to the downside, it was headed right towards this low. So how do we take advantage of a day like this? I did not get into a short. I did not get into this move here, this initial run lower. I thought about maybe taking one of these pullbacks here before the open, but again, I don't really like to trade the open. I did have a limit right at this high just in case, but I just didn't love the thought of getting in on these wicks. So I just wanted to see a little bit more. But once price hit this low, then I saw a buy setup. And I saw a buy setup on NASDAQ, but I did not take it on NASDAQ. And the reason why is for what I've been saying for a while now, which is we've been seeing for quite a bit of time now that S&P has been relatively stronger compared to the NASDAQ. So if I see a setup on both S&P and NASDAQ at about the same time in the same direction, I feel like it is just smarter to take the one that's stronger. So in this case, I will show you, you can see NASDAQ on the right, which took out Friday's low, while S&P didn't even come close to Friday's low. At least the S&P had a internal low here that got swept. But you can see just quite clearly just from this chart that the S&P is the stronger of the two. And so since they both were showing the same exact setup, if I look at the 1 minute, I would say similar setup, because I still think even just looking at side by side, you can see that the S&P one, if I just kind of make them, you can more or less tell that this displacement is just stronger above this high. And this one had a very similar setup, but there is a gap here too on the right here. If you look, there is a tiny gap, but so you could have taken that, but I think you might have seen one of my recent reviews. I took a loss when I took NASDAQ when I didn't have time to check the S&P, and the S&P ended up never hitting what would have been where the stop loss was, whereas the NASDAQ did make another run lower. So wanted to make sure I really stuck to my plan and took the stronger of the two. So if I go back to S&P, you can see that I got in here on this gap, stop below here, and then where did I target? Well, I targeted the IDR high because we're still generally bearish. So I look at this as kind of a counter trend trade, and I'm not going to try to, especially since we've had, like I said, the previous price action earlier in the day, and we have a clean break out of Asia, and London is also trending down. And also, most importantly, we have hit this gap sorry, not hit this gap. The market gapped open and then closed below it. This is right before the entry, the buy entry. So this becomes a resistance area. So it doesn't make sense to target way up here. I mean, how often do you see, why would you expect, if we're generally bearish, when you have these big down candles, wouldn't want to expect for there to be an immediate rejection to the upside. Just doesn't seem high probability. So what do we have here? At this IDR DR high, we never get a confirmation close. Here later we do get above the IDR, but again, that's just an early indication. So I don't like to go off of early indications, especially when we're generally bearish. But what is this right here? We have this wick rejection. Let me get rid of this order. We have this wick rejection, we have this wick rejection, and then we have a close below this bullish candle. So this would be a scenario 2 sell setup. And our higher time frame area of interest is this H4 gap, which I'll show you again. Prices now had closed below it and with a pretty aggressive candle, and now is retesting it from the bottom side. And we are getting that scenario 2 short setup. But what did I just say about the NASDAQ, about the S&P being stronger than NASDAQ? Because S&P is the stronger of the two, if I see a buy setup on both, I'd rather take a buy on S&P. And if I see a sell setup on both, I'd rather short the NASDAQ. So when I saw this as a scenario 2 short setup on S&P, my next thought was to jump back to NASDAQ and to look for a valid short setup. So as you can see how much weaker this is, this did not reach it all the way up to the IDR levels like S&P did. This only reached to, about the midpoint, a little above, and then broke back below. So where did I enter? Well, looking back on it, I wish I just had entered kind of like on this up close candle. We took this liquidity here. Oops, we took this liquidity, short-term liquidity here, filled this imbalance. And, this was, if you just take a look at a fib here, would have been over 50%, 62%. That would have been a great entry, would have given me better risk to reward than what I ended up getting, which was just based off of the 1 minute. So I took a 1 minute entry, but you'd think that would give me a tighter stop loss, but I did not want to put my stop. This was another thing I could have done. I could have just put my stop just above this structure high right here, and I would have stayed in the trade. So my target was probably a new low, but I closed before because it didn't reach to that point. But basically I could have had my stop above here, and I would have also had a better risk to reward. I could have entered here on the 5 minute, as I mentioned before, stop above here, gotten a better risk to reward, but instead I had my entry here and I just kept my stop above. I didn't go above the maximum extreme here, but about there was where my stop was. And it looked like it was going okay. Then looked like we were just going sideways. So once we rated this high right here, I moved my stop to above this. Once we rated this high and then got a little move away, I didn't want to see it go back above this high. So I reduced my risk to about half, which I thought was pretty good management. And then when we got close to it, I thought, okay, I'll probably just take a half risk, 0.5% loss. But it didn't get there. Fortunately, it reversed there and went down towards the low. So pretty happy with how I managed the trade. Didn't really suffocate it, but also, protected myself. And what happened? How did I get out of the trade? So once we got to about, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Once we got to about 3 p.m. Eastern time, it's right around here. So we were by the IDR low. We were getting kind of like this rejection back up here. And by 3 o'clock, the higher low is probably in. So I wasn't expecting to make a new low at this point, even though it did if I held into the next session. But no. So I ended up closing right when it was kind of pushing back into the IDR level here. And once we got past about 3 o'clock, I closed the trade. So only got about 1.2 yeah, 1.7, 1.6, and then I think the other one was 2 point, what was it? I already closed it, but 2.4, something like that. So all in all, not bad for first day back after the long weekend. And let's look back at the monthly. The monthly candle is going to close in a couple days, and we've rejected off of this monthly level right here, that previous month's open, and we had the remaining gap fill there, and then had a sharp rejection. So unless we get a very furious buyback towards the end of the month, it looks like we are headed towards the November low. Maybe in early January we get to there. So yeah, I don't expect too much with only 2 days left, but we'll still watch the charts and see what we get. So that's it. Hope you had a great day, and we'll be back again soon.